Hi, welcome to the Chad Bozarth Show. Thanks for listening. All right, Mrs. Headley, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, it's good to see you and hear from you right now, that's for sure.
We are recording. I'm glad we had a little bit of technical issues to begin with because it does make me think back to what was life like back when we just had answering machines and people would just pop over and wouldn't warn you when they were coming with a million texts.
Yes, it was a lot different. Even now, some people I feel like I need to text them to say, I'm going to call you. And other people you can still call. Generational, I think.
I was telling that to somebody I work with the other day. She had texted me, and then I called her back. I said, "I'm so sorry that I'm calling you now because that always bugs me when I text somebody and then they call me."
Yes.
But that's what it is. So I have known you for a long time. I moved here starting in third grade, which I joke about, but kind of not joking. It was one of the worst years of my life, moving from Hilton Head, South Carolina. We had a golf course behind our house and we were 5 minutes from the beach, and then we moved here to Duncanville. But I ended up at Gospel Lighthouse and Lighthouse Christian Academy, and I'm so thankful that I did. So 1992, um, you guys been there for a while at that point?
Yeah, we went there in 1983.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, we had been there. And the school was formed the first year that Gregg was the executive pastor. And then he helped Dr. Mary Campbell in opening Lighthouse Christian Academy. And then when he became pastor, 3.5 years later, just continued the school. So we were
Mhm.
there with the beginning of the school, which was
Yeah.
great.
How's it now? Growing up, were you a pastor's kid growing up?
Yes, my dad pastored Assemblies of God churches from the time I was like 3 years old, and yeah, till he retired. Yes.
Really? Are you originally from Alabama?
No, my dad, I was born in Indiana and he moved us to Georgia when I was about 3.5 years old. So I lived all my teenage years, elementary years, and all of that in the state of Georgia. And
Oh,
then
okay.
I went to college in Florida at Southeastern University, and that's where I met Gregg. And then he just kind of made me kind of claim Alabama as my home. So most people think I'm from Alabama, but I'm really a Georgia peach. That's the truth. So that's what I'm
Really?
saying.
Oh my goodness. What was that like growing up as a pastor's kid just during that time and in the assemblies of God? What was that like?
I mean, there was a lot of really fun things to it. You know, you lived in a fishbowl, yes, but you
Mm.
also had a lot of respect in society. I do remember my mom and dad, the first two places that they pastored in Savannah, Georgia, in a little town called Garden City. And
Mm.
then in Columbus, Georgia, both of those places we lived, like when my mother would write a check and it said Reverend Glenn Snodgrass, she would never have to show ID or anything because if a pastor was writing a check, they trusted you.
Really?
So that always stuck in my mind how that in my early years growing up, there was just a lot of respect in the South for ministers. So you got treated with respect, you and your family, most places that you went, and that was a blessing.
Mm. That's interesting. When do you think
Yes.
that started to change? Or do you think that's changed over the years?
Oh, definitely it's changed. I mean, for one thing, I feel like that the pastoral role is not viewed in the same way as it used to be because there's so many different kinds of churches and ministries and people that call themselves reverend. And so it's a little bit harder to trace someone's credentials and then through, just the time and really I would say the office of the pastor not holding up the level of respect that people gave to them with just different things that it's changed somewhat for sure.
Hmm. Why do you think that's happened? Just because just kind of anybody and everybody starts a church if they're a decent speaker? Why do you think that's happened?
Our culture has just changed as a nation. I don't feel like we have the respect for authority in any positions anymore. So, of
Hmm.
course, the church would be involved in that. I mean, when you were small and my kids were small, most all children held policemen and firemen and doctors and nurses and all these people with a high level of respect. We trusted them. What they told us, we believed was the truth and always for our best interest.
Hmm.
And we've just seen that not take place in the last 10 to 15 years for sure.
Hmm. So you ended up at Southeastern and Fort. That's interesting you said Savannah because we're living on Hilton Head. Savannah is where we would go to the mall because that was like the
Uh-huh.
biggest mall that would have been close to us.
And that was where the first Chick-fil-A was in a mall.
Was it really?
Yeah, so I remember when we drove to the mall in Savannah and my dad said we're going to eat a chicken sandwich and he had told some of our friends and so they went and we all ate chicken and we loved it. We loved Chick-fil-A sandwich. But a lot of people were like this is never going to be a business. People are used to hamburgers. They don't want fried chicken on a bun. But that was wrong because obviously it's done very well. So I think
Yeah.
that's why I'm such a big Chick-fil-A fan is
Yeah.
because it kind of opened up in Savannah, Georgia at the Oglethorpe Mall, I believe was the name of it. But,
Oh, interesting. That's cool to know.
yeah. So we went to the beach at Hilton Head. That was the
You
first
did?
beach. That was the first beach I ever got in the water was at Hilton Head. Hmm.
Really?
Yep. Yep.
Where would y'all stay when you, was there like a specific, because back in those days, I mean, there was the bridge, but like, I mean, it's been years since I've been to Hilton Head, but last time I went, I mean, it was just a complete, just, it was so busy. What was it
Hmm.
like back in those days?
Well, we lived in a little town called Port Wentworth. And so when we went across like the marshlands and
Yeah.
were going out of that area, we got right into Beaufort and then just went right over to Hilton Head. So we kind of had a back road that we went to. And it took about, I think, about 30 minutes from my house growing up to go there.
Really?
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think I ever knew that connection. As long as I've known you, I don't think I ever knew that connection.
Yes. Yes.
That's really cool. Well, so you ended up in southeastern in Florida. What what was on your mind when you went there? Were you thinking you wanted to get involved in ministry, or you had in the back of your mind you wanted to marry a minister, or what was your
You
thinking on
know,
that?
I don't think I ever had in my mind I wanted to marry a pastor. My sister kind of did, but I didn't. But we were very involved in church and in ministry. I think the advantage of being raised in a minister's home, especially I would say my dad pastored in churches under 200 or 250 people. So we learned a lot of leadership skills. And so
Mm,
I got my first job at age 15 at the hospital in Columbus, Georgia. I was a candy striper and then I got hired as a unit clerk and then I kind of got trained to be a nurse's aide and did, technical work as far as like taking blood from people and all that. Back then, you didn't have to be certified. They just showed you how to do it and you just did it. So I just did a lot of things that now I'm like, yeah, you should really learn better than just somebody showing you once or twice because I thought I wanted to be a nurse. So all through high
really?
school, my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade years, I worked at the hospital in the summers and after school every day and took all the classes to be a nurse. And so kind of had the hospital was going to do a dual scholarship with me for Emory University in Atlanta. And then right between my junior and senior year, I was at youth camp and just had an experience with the Lord at the altar and really felt called to ministry. And so I started
Mm,
talking to my parents about maybe I don't want to be a nurse, maybe I want to go to Bible college. And back then, like Southeastern and Southwestern and all those, they had a lot of singing groups and drama groups and stuff that would come to your city and there'd be a big youth rally and they would perform
mm,
and do stuff. So you always knew about the colleges because they were part of your yearly experience with camp and youth rallies. And so in February of my senior year, my mom and dad and I took 30 days to pray and we fasted and prayed every morning at breakfast. And then was kind of what my parents taught us. And then at the end of 30, at the end of February, which wasn't 30 days, probably 27, 28 days, we all would vote or say, this is what the Lord spoke to my heart. And we all three wrote down that we felt like God had spoke to our hearts that I should go to Southeastern. And so we prepared then for me to go to college there.
oh, interesting. Oh, can you tell me about so as a family when y'all would have kind of a big decision to make, you guys would kind of separately but jointly pray and fast for a period of time and then kind of come back and vote?
Yep. That's how I
Really?
was raised. And now my dad would always say, he would say he wanted us to learn to hear the voice of God. He wanted us to be in the decisions because every decision affected our family. But that God is the one that would lead and guide him. If the vote or there was a split vote or whatever, then we would pray a little bit more and then he would make the decision. But honestly, every decision I remember, and we even did that about, where we were going to school and different things. Every decision I remembered, we always were in agreement. I mean, pretty much everybody
Mm,
was, yeah, that's what we should do. And we did that.
that's really cool.
Hmm. Yeah.
Man, that's interesting. So was that like, was it like after you did that, was it just kind of like a strong feeling you had that kind of led you to a particular thought or like what?
Sometimes we would have a scripture that we would read that we had been praying and we felt like, that just like in Proverbs 3, where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all our ways acknowledge him. He will direct our paths. And we would say, this is the scripture that God put on my heart. And I believe that if he's opened a door, he's going to direct our paths to there. So I think, yes, we should move. And then
Mm,
my sister might say something similar, or God might have given her a word, change is coming, and she would share that, or different things like that.
interesting.
Hmm.
That is so, thank you for sharing that. That's so cool. I like that. The all kind of praying together and I love that. That's awesome. So you ended up there and you met Pastor Greg. Was he kind of single-mindedly he was wanting to go into ministry?
Yes. I mean, thankfully, he told me right off the bat he didn't think he would ever pastor and he didn't really want to go do missions overseas. He wanted to be a Bible college professor. And so
Mm,
that was kind of his direction at that point. And I was like, well, good, because I don't want to be a pastor's wife. That sounds great to me. And I really don't want to live overseas and not be around my family. So, okay, yeah, I'll take that. So pretty much we always discussed when we were in Bible college, which later became university, that I wanted to teach school and he wanted to be a university professor. And then we would travel and do missions and camps in the summer and be off and just enjoy all that. That's kind of what our mindset was. Actually, it was our mindset until we came to Texas and he was on staff at Bethel Assembly of God in Arlington, Texas for about 3 years. And by the time that I had taught school for a few years, and then we had our firstborn son, and God really opened a door for him to go back to Southeastern and with President Hennessy and to be maybe the dean of men and teach some classes and then work on his doctorate. And when he was coming back from that trip to Florida, I was at home with the baby, and he just felt so clearly that God said, "No,
mm,
that's not your direction." And he wasn't looking forward to telling me that because honestly, he knew how much I loved the beach, and I had dreamed of living in Lakeland and being by all the beaches my whole life. And Texas had no water at that time, anywhere near we lived. But when he landed, I just knew in my heart that it was a no. And then it was about 4.5 months later that we met and went on staff and interviewed to be at Gospel Lighthouse in Dallas. And then Gregg was an executive pastor there, and it was still a little bit more like we're not sure we want to pastor, but we knew that position was for us. But the longer we stayed there, the more we loved pastoring and felt like God had put that on our hearts. So when they asked us to interview to be the lead pastors, we went away for 3 nights and 4 days and fasted and prayed and talked about what it would look like to be in full-time ministry because we knew so many pastors and families where they burned out and the families didn't even like their kids didn't want to go to church or be a part of anything. And so we
mm,
spent that time fasting and praying and knowing that we were saying yes to the Lord, but also really feeling like we were going to set boundaries in our life to take days off and to take vacations and make sure that our kids never felt like ministry came before them. And so we just
mm,
made a lot of good boundaries that we pretty much abided by our whole life and feel like that it was great seeds planting in our kids that
mm,
thankfully they both are in church and serve the Lord and their families, and we're so grateful for that.
mm. That's great. Well, I guess that's a testament. I mean, you still wanted to go to church after growing up in a pastor's home.
Oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah, for sure. And Greg the same way. I mean, both of us were very Both of us were just very strong, mature believers. I mean, when I was 15 years old, my dad's church in Columbus, Georgia had begun to really grow, and we needed to have kids' church. And so we had a couple ladies that helped with nursery and preschool. So I ended up teaching kids' church when I was 15, 16, and 17 by myself on Sunday mornings, met with parents, talked to them, met with kids, took care of kids, and all of that. So I was really involved as a children's pastor before we ever had those terms for sure.
Mm,
So going into education when I got to Southeastern was just, a stepping stone into what God was going to do through me, but preparing myself as an educator at that time.
mm. When you guys kind of were starting to pivot away from going back to Florida to pastoring, obviously there's obedience involved. How much would you say was like obedience and how much was your heart started to turn?
I think a lot of it was your heart. My heart started to turn, and I think Greg's did as well.
Mm,
And realizing too, I think back then there was this big shift, I want to say, maybe in theology or maybe in practice. I'm not sure. But when I was growing up for a period of time, there were a lot of people that preached, you had to be in the perfect will of God. There was one man for you to
mm,
marry, one choice for you to make, and all that. But by the time I got through Bible college and, we had all learned a lot of things we didn't know before, then you heard about there's the permissive will of God and the perfect will of God, and so then we went through that. And I think, we begin to realize that when God has a call on your life for ministry, it could be as a teacher, a missionary, a pastor, it could be different seasons, it could be in the
mm,
marketplace, then you go back into ministry. And so I think all of that began to be opened up to us differently, so that by the
mm,
time we got to the Lighthouse, it wasn't like we had to have one church to be in the perfect will of God or do this one thing. We could do a myriad of things. And God just put in our heart a love for the people of Gospel Lighthouse Church. So it wasn't even so much as, okay, now we're going to be a pastor. It's like God's already called us to love these people dearly, and this position is open. So, yes, we want to obey
mm,
him, but yes, we want to do what he's called us to do, which is to love and lead people. And this is where we are. So it just felt a little different.
mm. I love that answer, and I'm always thinking about that question for my own life, but then being around so many students that are, Bible college age, just out of high school or early 20s, that's always a persistent question. What's God's will for my life? What should I do? All of these types of things. And I don't know the answer to that. I think it's gradual and different for everybody. And like you said, um, I
And
love
I
I
think
love what you
we
said.
realize there's seasons. I mean, I feel like we're called to be husbands and wives, and we're called to be
Mm,
parents when we have children.
mm,
Some people, their children go through needs, and they don't need to be pastoring because of their children's needs,
mm,
or they don't need to be missionaries at that time because of their children's needs. God knew that when those children were born to you, and He knew that when He called you, quote unquote, into ministry. So He can give you space to take care of your family when you need to take care of your family, and then open other doors at later times. And I feel like we're learning that still a lot, but I think that's very positive for ministers to realize that your family is the first people you need to disciple and make sure they know and love Jesus, and they can manage where you are in whatever position you're in. And if not, God allows you to change some things and do something different in a season. And I don't think we knew that when I was
mm.
growing up.
That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. Well, let me ask you this. So you mentioned uh, at the beginning about respect for authority and that type of thing that's changed over the years. What would you say, not in society, but in the church specifically? What would you say is maybe one of the biggest or the biggest changes you've seen in your time in ministry that has happened in the church itself?
Hmm. Well, I think I was at a Bible study this morning where we were talking about having a holy fear of God and reverence for Him.
Mm,
And I think that we've lost that
mm,
within the body of Christ. We don't hear as much preaching or teaching about having that reverent fear and awe of God. It's
mm,
more like He's our Father, He loves us, He gives us grace, Jesus is our friend. all of that is true. But then there's something about setting aside and realizing, okay, he is above all things. He's the King of
Hmm.
Kings. He's the Lord of Lords. And so out of that position, we respect him.
Hmm.
And in our culture today, I don't think positions are respected. I
Hmm.
think that people wait to see if somebody earns their respect.
Hmm.
And so they watch a life and determine whether or not they're going to give respect to that person.
Hmm.
And I think that is the way a lot of people view pastors as well.
Hmm. Interesting.
And one of the things that I felt like I appreciated when we were pastoring at the Lighthouse and even in the culture in which we live now, um, children that are raised in Catholic homes, they have a whole different level of respect for their pastors because they were giving a real strong lesson growing up in really putting their priest in a
Hmm.
on a pedestal and
Hmm.
giving them respect and honor and authority. And so when people that have had that background give their hearts to Jesus, you can sense a lot of times that they have a different respect for the pastor in the church
Hmm.
compared to people that have just been in churches and they've seen pastors come and go and they have all their own issues of what they've seen in the lives of humans that did wrong things or made mistakes or that they just didn't like or whatever. And so I just feel like that kind of becomes a virus sometimes, in our
Hmm.
culture, and not showing respect to pastors. When I was growing up, if you were ever in a church service or in a parking lot or in a restaurant or anything, and somebody was attending your church and you as the pastor and his wife were standing there and kids or something, if that person said a cuss word or got ready to tell an off-color joke or whatever, they would immediately stop out of respect.
Hmm.
Just stop that conversation. But, in the last 15 or 20 years, I would say that hasn't happened in my circles most of the time.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about people that are just giving their hearts to Christ. I'm talking
Sure.
about people that are also part of the body of Christ. And it's not like they do anything deliberately. I just think that it's just we've normalized not giving respect and honor to people in authority. And so, of course, it comes across in the church as well.
Hmm. It's interesting.
Of course, these are my opinions.
No, that's good. No, I'm just thinking about it. That's sobering, and yeah. How can we fix that?
Well, I mean, first of all, it starts with the position of our hearts.
Hmm.
I think it's really how we love and respect people as believers, and then also that we love and respect people that are in leadership and the positions that they're given to them, and
Hmm.
showing that and talking about that and giving them that respect in our heart, praying for them,
Hmm.
honoring them. Because really, I mean, I feel like in the society in which I live, the majority of the time, people in my age group show honor and respect to other people. But there's several generations in our world right now that they don't show honor and respect to anybody unless they deserve it. And
Yeah.
they get to determine whether or not that person deserves it.
Hmm.
And it's kind of random.
Yeah, and I wonder if in past generations there was like an emphasis on we respect and honor this position regardless of who's in the position. And now
Yes.
it's kind of reverse. It's like you said, we subjectively honor the person regardless of the position. Yeah. And then yeah, I'll be thinking about that because I see what you're saying. Well, speaking of leadership, you were my English teacher in seventh grade.
Yes, I do remember that.
I
I
think
remember teaching seventh grade English for sure. Yes.
I think back now to that and just oh my goodness, having kids and dealing with teachers now and then looking back to how I treated people and teachers and I think, "Oh my goodness, like how did y'all do that?"
Well,
How
we were in a Christian school, so thankfully all around us it was given. the value of showing respect to teachers and things. But middle school students, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, they're just still trying to learn how to be adults. So there's a lot of different things that go on in the classrooms and in the halls for sure.
Oh my goodness. What was that like? Because it was interesting because I played basketball with your sons growing up, which was awesome. Well, although if I'm being totally honest, I sat the bench when Adam was playing, and then and then anyway. I mean, Adam and Nathan are both so good. I Anyway, I'm drifting off. What was that like being like the leader of the church in kind of that state of leadership, but then also more on a different level, actually doing day-to-day teaching?
Uh-huh. Hmm.
What was that like, kind of that mixed role? And then not only that, not only were you a teacher, but you had kids that were students in the school.
Right, right.
So that's and yeah, I don't know what was that like?
Well, it was very busy, busy in my mind and busy in my body. Um, I mean, I enjoy teaching. I love teaching. And so I enjoyed teaching in the classroom. And I really, when my boys were like 10 and 12, and I had been fasting and praying about what I needed to do, I really felt like the Lord spoke to my heart and said that just as you stayed home to teach them when they are 2 or 3, you need to teach them in school and middle school for a few years. So I waited for to see how the Lord was going to work that out. And that particular year at school, when Adam was in seventh grade, there was a position open part time for someone to
Interesting.
teach English and uh, Texas history and some Bible classes. And so that's kind of how I got back into teaching. And but at that point in time, we were on AB schedules. So I taught
Mm,
2 days a week or 3 days a week, depending on the week. And so that worked out well. It's hard to mesh being a pastor's wife and to teach school full time. It's just a lot. You don't really ever get a day off because Saturdays are full days for pastors most of the time
yeah.
to get ready for Sundays and all of that. But that really helped me having that part-time position and doing an AB schedule. But I think it was for me, I enjoyed being in the classroom, and I felt like when I was in the classroom, I was a teacher. And then
Mm,
Adam and Nathan, of course, both also had me as their teacher, and I did my best to be their teacher in the classroom. And when we got home, to not bug them about doing their homework and all that kind of stuff, just to be their teacher when I was in there, and then at home be their mom, and then be the pastor's wife. So it was. I think the reason why I was able to make it work as long as we did is because when Greg and I first went away for that fasting and prayer time, we really talked about boundaries. So I
mm,
didn't come home and talk to him about all the stuff that went on at school every day and the teaching staff or the principal or any of that. I was a teacher when I was there. I did what I was called to do. I supported all the staff regardless. I didn't go home and gripe and whine to him about any of that.
mm.
And actually, I felt like our boys did really well at that too, and keeping those separate. And I feel like in order to be successful, really, and to keep the joy of the Lord as your strength, you really have to learn to set boundaries and just not let certain things come out your mouth and not let them bother you, and realize that people are people, whether they're at a Christian school teaching there or their students are there.
Hmm.
And, just knowing how all of that works, and being careful to be positive in all things.
How do you how do you set boundaries? So I guess this is kind of a long question, but I remember for years taking an acting class, and in the context of that acting class, the teacher kind of sets the standards, and everybody's playing together and taking risks in the context of these rules that everybody kind of agrees upon, these boundaries
Right,
that have been communicated to everybody. And so there's like this freedom to take risks in that environment because everybody's on the same page. But
right.
then when you get on set of whatever, it's like it's a little bit more scary to take those same risks because you're not sure if these other people are going to be on the same page because they didn't hear the teacher explain what the boundaries were. So that's a long way of saying, okay, how do you set boundaries? So you set boundaries with you and your husband or you and your kids, but how do you set or enforce boundaries in the midst of a community or world that maybe doesn't care about your boundaries or isn't on the same. I don't know. How do you? Not that that's some easy question, but I don't, how do you do that? How do you set boundaries in general, and how do you set boundaries with other people that without telling them, "Hey, I'm setting a boundary with you." Like,
Right. Well, I mean, I can give you an example. I remember there was one lady in our church, and every time I did women's ministry as well. So every time I was around her, she was pretty negative, and usually she was criticizing something my husband said in the sermon or what I wore. Or so it wasn't like she had some major spiritual things that were all these outward things, you know. And so I remembered one time on a Wednesday night when it was very hard for me, and I had her in the class that I was teaching that night, and she had just come back with a lot of different things. And so we were actually taking a trip after that Wednesday night and going to our general council, which is one of our leadership conferences. And I remembered all the way there, I was just really praying about, like, Lord, you're just going to have to help me know what to do here. So this is when I believe that, you know, the Bible says pray about everything. And so I was really praying, how do I handle this situation? I don't want her to feel rejection from me, but I can't be around this. This is not good. And then sometimes she would act like that I was in agreement with what she said and tell somebody else, because I wouldn't necessarily stand up and say that's wrong, you know what I
mm,
mean, or that's not what happened, because it wasn't something I wanted to discuss with her. So really, the Lord led me, and I was actually studying on in Timothy, First and Second Timothy, while I was on that trip and reading and praying. And I remember I was sitting out having coffee by the pool one morning doing devotions by myself, and the Lord just took me to that passage in Timothy where it said, you know, that you can't be swept away by the culture and the words that other people speak. And that if you're going to be around someone like that, take someone with you. Don't be with them alone.
mm,
And I just really felt like the Lord was telling me, you can't just stand in her presence. You don't go to lunch with her. You don't go to coffee with her. You don't stand in the hall and talk to her. You
mm,
always grab somebody else and put them part of the conversation.
mm,
So I started doing that when I went back. You know, I would turn when I was teaching a class. If she brought up something, I would have everybody turn in groups and discuss what she just said. You know what I
mm,
mean, and what we felt about that, and I just kind of did that. And so I feel like when your heart, we make a decision in our heart for what our values are,
mm,
and we spend our money according to our values. We spend our time according to our values. So I think it's real important for families to know what their values are. And then out of their values, they set boundaries or standards for their home, for their language, for their budgets, for their entertainment, all of those kind of things. And
mm,
so when you do that and you begin to teach that when your kids are young and all that, as as things begin to evolve, you don't sit around and say these are our boundaries, but it's just like anything. In this house, we brush our teeth at least twice a day, right?
mhm,
That's a habit. That's kind of a boundary that we think is real important, because as parents, we pay the dental bill. So we would like for you to do that.
mm,
So we do that with all of those things. So, like in our house, you know, one of the boundaries that we had in our house is if you were watching TV, somebody had to have the control in their hand. So if something came
mm,
on the TV, that commercial or whatever we didn't think was appropriate, somebody better be turning the channel for those few minutes. If that didn't take place, we just cut the TV off and we didn't watch it anymore that night, because
mm,
we should be following the boundaries that we set. So I think that carries over in relationships. I think that carries over in our money, our time, how we treat one another, you know. Like we did our best in our home to not call each other stupid or say we hated each other or any of those kind of things. You know, it didn't mean we didn't have frustrations and we didn't have conflict, but we tried to choose our words carefully in
mm,
how we did that.
mm. That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you this. I really appreciate this, Mrs. Headley. Um, you grew up in a ministry house. What would you say once you jumped in and you got in ministry yourself? What maybe surprised you the most about being in ministry?
Um, I think the surprise was just the responses and reactions of people
Hmm.
in your face about all different things. And then I think it would be the balance of time and schedules and those kind of things. My dad always made a practice that I remember. He would pick us up from school most of the time, take us home, and we would eat an early meal and be with my dad, and he would talk to us about our day and all that kind of stuff. And then many times he left again at 6 or 6:30 for meetings or visitation and all of that. But we saw him every night at dinner time. So that was one of the things that we carried over into our family because both of our families had done that. We had a family meal, during the week and sat at the table and talked about things. And I think one of the surprises I had was during the time we were pastoring, that's when I began to see the erosion of the family and a lot of people not doing those things. So it
Mm,
was surprising to me that you would pay money and send your kid to a Christian school and you didn't have prayer and devotions in your home. You didn't
mm,
sit as a family and make that a priority. You didn't necessarily choose your entertainment carefully.
mm,
You just expected someone to learn that because they went to church or because they went to a Christian school, but yet those kind of values have to be lived out and
mm,
explained, and we see the benefit of it in order for it to be caught, not just taught by words.
mm,
So I think I was surprised at the amount of people that at times would be in our circle, but they didn't have family devotions and they didn't live out their family values and that kind of thing. But I wasn't surprised by too many things as a pastor's wife, other than you're just caught off guard sometimes with conversations and things like that. But because I had been a preacher's kid, there are so many people in your church that you love and that are just quality people, quality leaders that you love on. New people come to Jesus and you mentor them in discipleship, spend time discipling them. And so they become part of your circle. And so there were just so many good positive things that I didn't see a lot of the negative things. And I kind
mm,
of made up my mind when we determined that we were going to let our name go up to be voted on to be pastors. I just pretty much in that prayer and fasting time just made up my mind that I was going to say every day, I love my life and I love being a pastor's wife and I find great joy in all that we do. And so that was just one of my values that I repeated
mm,
and prayed over. And not that we didn't have tough times, but I determined like this is an assignment from the Lord and He knows who I am. So He knows I can enjoy all the parts about that.
mm. That is so good. Well, let me ask you this as we wrap up. Um, you've been in ministry for a long time. You've been married for a long time. I mean, what would you say to somebody starting out, but what would you somebody say to somebody that's in the midst of it? Like what's the I don't like the phrase like secret to success or whatever, but what would be what's your secret? What's your secret to staying married to Pastor Greg for so long and being in ministry so long? What's the secret?
I think the secret is that everything takes work.
Mm,
And, we're living in a culture right now where people don't want to do the hard stuff.
mm,
And it takes work to stay married and be happy. It takes work to be a committed believer. It takes work to be in ministry. All of those things take your energy and your effort, but you get joy in all of those things, even though it takes work when you've learned to be in the secret place with Jesus on a
mm,
daily basis. And so he begins to lead and guide you in such a way that, if you're spirit led, then I believe you should be working smarter, not harder,
mm,
because the Holy Spirit says, do this, don't do that. That's not a good idea. Lay that aside, pick this up. You just get this GPS that helps your spiritual life and your mental and emotional life stay balanced.
mm,
So I think staying married a long time is you have to learn to enjoy things that you do together,
mm.
and also things you do separate. Greg plays golf, and I'm so glad he's gone 4 or 5 hours and plays golf. That doesn't bother me at all. And I'll gladly spend some likewise money on things that I enjoy that he doesn't want to do. But then we do things together,
Yeah.
and we've grown to make it a priority of what we can do together. I mean, one of the things I chose to do, Greg's family were big Alabama fans, and they're like, if you're going to be in our family, you have to be an Alabama fan. And I'm like, okay. So my dad wasn't really much into college football, but he watched NFL, but I knew enough about the game to get involved in it. So Greg and I enjoy watching football games together. You know, I
Mm.
love basketball and he knows that. So we enjoy watching the Mavericks, not so much the last year or
Oh,
two.
oh,
It's
don't
been
get
a
me
little bit
started.
brutal, but we're still hanging in there and believing for a better season this year with our new coach and everything. So, you have to find things that you enjoy doing. Even in ministry, you know, you need to spend time doing the things in ministry that you enjoy doing,
Yeah.
um, and let that be who you are. So, I
Uh,
don't know if that answered the question or not.
no, that's so good. No, that's fantastic. Well, I mean, thank you so much, Mrs. Headley, for taking time with me and sharing this insight. And you've been a blessing to me for since I was 8, I guess. Probably I met you when I was 8.
Yep, I think so.
So I remember, I think I was in 7th grade, maybe one time I was playing outside with Nathan and I came in and I have no idea what it was about, but you asked me like a direct question and I lied right to your face. And I don't know why I did that. I think I was scared of the content. I don't even know what it was about, but that happened a long time ago and I still remember. I can like remember that moment of lying to you and I still it sticks with me. So anyway, sorry about that.
Well, obviously it didn't affect me, and maybe I knew you were lying, and I just chose to let it go because we all do things like that.
Oh
Uh,
man. But no, you've been a blessing to me for a long time. So thank you so much and great to see you.
Great to see you too, and it's wonderful to have a conversation. I'll look forward to seeing you and your mom again sometime soon.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Bye.
bye bye.